My name is Solomon Kinloch Jr., and I'm running for mayor of the city of Detroit. In the city of Detroit, having grown up on the west side of Detroit in poverty, not in a third world country, but in a place of impoverishment and lack of resources, helped my conditioning and my rearing and raising. It taught me how to be tender, how to be sensitive, and how to be compassionate, and how to use my life and the summation of my experiences to make an impact in the lives of other people so that life can be better for them than it was for me. And so that is the driving force of my entire life, being fueled from the feeling as a child of knowing that change is happening around you, but you don't sense and see the change affecting you. And so whether it's been in the pulpit, whether it's been in my capacity as any leader, that has been a fuel that has motivated me to keep going in life. As pastor of one of the predominantly African-American and largest churches in the region and one in America, it gives me the ability to continue to hear the real concerns of people. People have a concern that institutional politicians are not taking into consideration their agenda and their daily concerns. I read a recent poll that said 58% of people polled did not believe that sitting politicians and institutional politicians were taking their considerations into consideration. Being able for 27 years to be the pastor of a church of Triumph Church's magnitude gives me the ability to meet people's needs, and not to just do it in a particular place and space, but to do that within just the walls, but also outside the walls into the larger community. And so one of the things I believe this gives me the ability to do is a Kinloch administration is to extend that community work outside of a particular address. Many people forget that the church's address is a compilation of the city addresses. And so we act as though sometimes people are coming from another place and space, from another planet. But those people that worship in that place, that work in that place, that serve in that place, are people that show up from the community. And so when we take our work, not just in the church, but take our work outside the walls of the church, it gives us the ability to not just worship and work in the church on Sunday, but also impact the lives of the people on Monday and the rest of the week. And so I believe this gives us an opportunity to address those concerns, whether we're talking about economic development. We see that in downtown Detroit, something wonderful is going on. But what we want people to do is to make sure that they experience not just this renaissance and this revitalization downtown, but they experience it also on their part of town. We want to make sure that we're using this platform in order to make sure that people have access to affordable housing. When you look at the median income in the city of Detroit, you cannot say that $1,700, $1,800 is affordable for people who are only making $30-something thousand a year. And so we have to come up with some creative and innovative ways in order to get people to a pathway of generational wealth. And we know that real estate is one of those ways to do that. We have to create a pipeline through workforce development in order to make sure that we're training our young people to go into quality paying jobs. We have baseline industries right here in the metropolitan area, whether you talk about the medical and the health field, whether you talk about education, whether you talk about the airport. There are multiple industries right here, not to even touch and talk about urban farming, whether you talk about tech, whether you talk about other innovative industries that we can tap into, where we're training our young people to be funneled into those high quality paying jobs so that they can have sustainable lifestyles and sustainable source of income and living. Poverty. There has to be an intentional plan and strategic vision on poverty in the city of Detroit. Recently, when we witnessed and saw those two young babies die in the frigid cold in a car, their deaths cannot be in vain. But what we cannot ignore is that the poverty that they experienced, you had 3 generations of one family in a car. That cannot be ignored. We have to do a better job. And Detroit can do better, and Detroit will do better to make sure that lives are not being lost frivolously and in a frigid weather like that. And so I believe that in order to deal with poverty, you got to deal with workforce development. You got to deal with education. You got to deal with entrepreneurial opportunities. You have to deal with crime. Whenever you talk about dealing with poverty, we already know that if we give people a viable living and lifestyle, it affects everything else. It affects their ability to go to school and get a quality education. Because how do you expect a child to show up in class and learn and he's hungry, or learn and he doesn't have a roof over his head, or he's been in a house that didn't have working utilities? And so I believe in intentional strategy and a holistic strategy on dealing with poverty, but you can't deal with poverty without making sure that you attack the systematic and the structural issues that are leading to poverty. And that's the overall arching theme of opportunities. Opportunities cannot just be accessible to a few. And we cannot suggest that in our community, just because a few are doing okay, that everybody's doing okay. While we are in a tremendous place, Detroit is in a great place that it has not been in a long time. But we got to remember that we still can do better and we can do more. One of the things that any leader understands is that it's one thing when you're on the outside of the wall making an assessment, and then when you're behind the desk and you're responsible for not just the assessment, but for the execution and the strategic planning. And so the power of the mayoral office is not to just cast vision and communicate a vision. It is also to convene conversations in order to make sure that people feel like they are a part of the vision. One of the things that my campaign is not about lowering my agenda, my vision, or my will on the citizens, the residents, and the people in Detroit. One of the things that we're doing right now with Knock the Block with Kinloch is going out to businesses, to neighborhoods, and listening to people. Government was created for people, to be governed by people. And one of the things we need to do is get back to that and ask the people, what type of government do they want? What type of city do they want? And so as I'm going out, those are the questions that I'm asking in my listening sessions about what do you want to see in the city of Detroit. But one of the things that I think we can do immediately is to convene the stakeholders to make sure that we are bringing together the advocates and the activists, making sure that we're bringing together the union leaders, business leaders, making sure that we're bringing together the community leaders, the block club presidents, those residents in the city of Detroit that have credibility and have influence, and convene a conversation about what does a table look like in partnering with you to design what's best for your community. I think time is up and over for people to walk in and say, this is what we think is best for you. They need somebody in the seat that they know, like we grew up knowing that Coleman Alexander Young was a mayor for the people. That's cute terminology and phraseology for people to say it. But Coleman Young put work with the words. And one of the things that we would immediately do in that first 30 days is making sure that we're partnering with the community to create a holistic plan and ensure, secondly, that while we're doing that, that the continuity of services continue. Because one of the things that happened with the transition of leadership, people always worry, are the lights gonna stay on? Is trash gonna get picked up? Are people gonna still be answering our 911 calls? And so the first job that we have is to make sure that those things are continuing to happen, that people are having their basic services and needs met. But secondly, how do we cast vision for broader and better Detroit? Well, one of the benefits that I've had as the pastor of Triumph Church is to pastor 3 former chief of police, and even recently, the most recent former chief of police, James White, who is now gone to the authority. And having those relationships and having those front row seats and conversations, we have seen up front that we have some gifted and compassionate people that work in the police department. But what we want to do is make sure that the people we know and the hearts that they have is being experienced by the citizens that live in Detroit. And so while we've done some tremendous work, and I think we have the most tremendous people and tremendous chief of police in the city of Detroit, we can work on helping to develop community relationships between police and the residents in the city of Detroit. But not just talking, and I believe Bedison is doing a great job of that. He's always been a community kind of person. Not just talking when issues come up, but being proactive and having ongoing conversations. And so I believe ongoing conversations, as my mother would say, make your friends before you need them. And so just having ongoing conversations. The other thing I think we can do is to make sure that we're staffing mental health professionals on the police department to deal with non-emergency 911 calls and incidents. And the other thing I think that we can do is making sure that the police officers with the world in which we live in figure out what technology that we can use in an equitable way and in a strategic way that does not compromise or cause conspiracy theories among people, but people can have some assurance that we're using all resources at our discretion in order to make sure that our city is safe. One of the things we want to do is improve the relationship, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we are clear that people cannot come into our city and commit crimes against the most vulnerable members of our society and our city in general and believe that they can get away with it. And so we have to make sure that we're able to carry out that function and that perfunctory of the job in a way that leaves our citizens with dignity and respect. Well, as you know, entrepreneurship and small business is another great path to renaissance and real comeback in the city of Detroit. And so we have to make sure that the same resources that we make available to big business, we're making those resources available to startup entrepreneurs and the small businesses that have stuck and stayed in the city of Detroit. The other thing that we can do when we're looking at the economical and fiscal is that we have to come up with innovative and bold ways to ensure that people have opportunities in the city of Detroit. I mean, we can look at best practices across the country. I mean, take, for instance, a place like Maryland, who came up with their own millage, where they have $100 million when they can't find resources, when developers come into their city and can't find resources in other places, they can access the municipal resource and get loans at a very minimum interest rate and pay those loans back over a 5-year period so that they have access to the capital that they need in order to present opportunities. Being able to study best practices across the country and adopt some of those best practices based on what works well for the city and what doesn't. But one of the things that the mayor can do, another thing that the mayor can do, is to give people hope. People want to be a part of what's going on in the city of Detroit. We have to make sure that the people that have stayed here can continue to not just survive, but thrive. The businesses that have stayed here continue to survive, but also thrive. But also, we got to make sure that we're opening up opportunities for people who are not from here or people who left here to come back here and want to be a part of that. Even when you start talking about the down payment assistance program, when you start talking about making sure that people that live here can build equity as a result of the investments that they're making in purchasing homes, and people that are staying in their homes getting equity in order to sustain the homes that they're living in. But imagine opening up the door and allowing others that work for the city to get greater incentives to move back into the city with that down payment program assistance, or allowing other people who live in other places who see what's going on in this city and want to be a part of it. I believe we have to find a way to retain the talent so that when our young people are graduating from college, they're not running out of here, but they want to stay here. But also, we have to make sure that we are opening up not just a window, but a door wide enough so that people who see what's going on in the city of Detroit want to be a part of it, and they'll come back to it. Well, one of the things we're going to have to look at is zoning. And another thing that we're going to have to look at is being flexible with some of that zoning to create creative ways in order to build homes. You are exactly right, at a rate that's affordable for people to purchase those homes, but not only purchase those homes, but to continue to live in those homes. There's a multiple pronged approach that we can take when you start talking about housing. One, you can assess the people who are already living in homes, that are renting those homes, giving them access to resources and equity in order to purchase those homes. Secondly, you can look at how many people who already own a home, but a lot of these homes are old, antiquated, and outdated. They need resources in order to make those repairs. And so if they have the resources to make those repairs, let's open up an opportunity where they get credit for that at an accelerated level, at an elevated level. The other way you can look at this is you can go to the land bank. The land bank still has tens of thousands of property at their discretion and their disposal, making sure that the residents in the city get access to those, but also not just get access to those homes, get access to resources to purchase those homes and to renovate those homes. We can look at the advancement in construction, whether it's building in bulk, whether it's building in mass in order to bring the prices down. We could talk about 3D construction. 3D construction is something that is going on across the country that we can look at. The speed of a house being erected and the foundation being laid is not months, it's days. Things like that can be addressed. When you look at Atlanta and you see how they were able to construct 1,000 miniature homes for people who are homeless and impoverished, those are opportunities. And so the possibilities are endless on ways that we can create, but we just have to be bold enough. And you have to have leadership that's courageous enough in order to address that. particularly when you're looking at a time where there's so much uncertainty, where there's a lot of clawback from the federal government, so we don't know the resources we're gonna lose there. Then you start talking about the state, because as the feds draw back, state got to tighten up. Then when you look at the money that came in during COVID, that once it's spent, our budget don't look as bloated and ballooned as we have right now. So we're gonna have to find innovative ways in order to make that happen. And we gotta find some creative ways in order to meet those needs, because the alternative cannot be an alternative. Well, one of the things we need to stop treating people as an afterthought and making sure they're part of the initial thought. So many fights, confrontation, and friction that we get into in our city is because we come in and we want to tell people what's best for them, instead of having those conversations proactively and not reactionary. I believe that having those conversations on the front end and developing what we believe to be in partnership, a holistic and a comprehensive plan, will weed out some of that. We'll take care of some of that, because the residents will be at the table from the very beginning. Many times we coming in and we think because we got beautiful pictures and we showing it to the community that they ought to just like it because we said it. No, that's not how this works. At the end of the day, if I've been living in this community all my life, I want to be a part of what's happening in my community. And I don't want to be priced out at the end of the day. A lot of times people come in and they think because development is taking place and we're not getting a tax credit or an abatement for this, then whatever we want to do is okay. But what you're doing in the community is still impacting the economics of that community. And so anything you do in that community still needs to be a conversation, and it needs to be a conversation with the people that live there. And I believe as long as we're having those kind of conversations, we'll protect the heart and the soul of the city, because Detroit has a lot of heart and soul, and we want to make sure we preserve that, but we don't want to preserve it to such an extent that we're stifling progress and growth. Partnering with DPS at a greater level, not just in word, but in deed. You have municipalities across the country that even do some shared revenue with their district in order to make sure that the district have the sufficient resources. Casting holistic plans and visions, strategic visions, and developing those metrics. We have a superintendent, we have a school board, and so we want to exhaust all possibilities and potential with them. Detroiters have decided that's how they want the school board and the school system to be operated, with a superintendent and with school board. And what we would do as mayor is to work with them to say, what is the comprehensive plan and vision for the city, and how can the city most help with resources and relationship. But the other part of this is the mayor of the city of Detroit is also a role model. I grew up looking at Coleman Young as a role model. And so not just talking to the administration, but also talking to the young people in the city of Detroit, making sure that we have an intentional plan to deal with truancy. So what is the plan to deal with truancy? Because we can't just talk it. I remember when truant officers would come knock at your door if you weren't in school. And so being able to use the community influence and the trust that we have to inspire young people to go to school because they ought to want the best for themselves is something that I believe the mayoral office can do with the trust, because this is what being elected mayor is all about. Who do you trust? And you have to put somebody in that seat that you trust that is going to look out for what's best for you, and that sometimes is going to tell you stuff that you may not want to hear, but you need to hear that's beneficial for not just the city, but also the individual. I built something that you probably can count on both hands without using all of the fingers. The number of people that have been able to build something like this. To start off with a church with less than 100 people, to 8 campuses, to see tens of thousands of people come down the aisle and change their life, go back to school, come out of prison and re-enter society, go back and not just get 1 degree, but 2, and I've seen people get 3, get married, have kids, watch young people who I've given scholarship soar and go into some of the greatest careers and graduate from some of the greatest schools. Being able to grow like that, being able to have to be creative because we weren't given access to resources that other people were given access to. So we had to raise it in our own community. I had to teach and preach to a community that you can't wait on other people to do stuff for you. We have to come together. We may not have as much as other people have, but we can come together collaboratively and do something for ourselves. Being able to recruit people, being able to train people, being able to develop people, being able to cast a vision and execute that vision. Because it's one thing to have an idea, but it's another thing to have the ability to dig into the weeds and get those things done. And so being the pastor of a multi-campus church like Triumph Church, dealing with thousands of people on a weekly basis, navigating that. Because the other part of that is, we got to remember, ain't nothing more political than the Black church. And being able to navigate through all of that and lead a congregation that this year is 105 years old. It was over 70 years of age when I became the pastor. And to be able to be a leader of the same church without any schism, division, or splits for almost 30 years. This year makes my 27th year pastoring that church. Gives me the unique ability to have learned some lessons about how we can inspire people, how we can lead people, how we can be creative, innovative, and courageous. And at the same time, most important, how to be fiscal, but fair and compassionate, and treat people that regardless of what level of life they own, with dignity and respect. I believe that that is what sets me apart. To lead, when you get into the question of a pastor leading as mayor, one of the things that I'm always reminded of, and in any setting I'm in, I remind people of, is that is the DNA of the Black church and has always been the DNA of the Black preacher. Not to just worship on Sunday and be theological and spiritual, but also make sure that we're using the pulpit and the platform for social, entrepreneurial, financial, and also political, because the alternatives are dire. One of the things that we want to make sure that we're able to project is that this is not something that's new. This is something that we'll continue to do based on what has already been done. Like many people who grew up in the city of Detroit, we've always seen the pulpit in partnership with politics. We've always had pastors who sat in full-time municipal positions on city council and as appointee, but at the same time, those individuals also pastored meaningful and large congregations, because we understand that this is not something that we just should want to do and feel like doing. This is an obligation of something we are supposed to do. When you take somebody like Martin King, when we look back on it, what if Martin King had to listen to somebody that said to him, just stay in the pulpit, that boycotting and getting into policy and politics shouldn't be something you're involved in? What kind of world would our children, what kind of world would we be growing up in now? We have a moral responsibility to get involved. We have a moral responsibility not to sit on the sideline, not when you look at everything that our people are facing. And my 27 years of delivering for that, when I think about COVID, and I was on a call when they made a decision to shut down the schools, and the schools needed to be closed. And they were running off packets of homework to send the kids home with. My question became, where are they going to turn them back into if the schools are closed? Other districts, I was hearing, had already given their students tablets and laptops to take home with them. But we were locked up in bureaucracy when it came to digital devices for our young people. And so I didn't wait on anyone. I stood up to the congregation and said to them, listen, we got a digital divide. I don't know what nobody else gonna do, but until they figure it out, we need to do something. So one thing we did was turn the church, even when we couldn't have worship service, we turned the church into a 7-day-a-week human service center. We hooked up with Mike from Mike's Fresh Market, and we said to him, every time you put in your order for your grocery store, put Triumph Church's order in as well. And we were feeding thousands of families, hundreds of families on a weekly basis, and thousands on a daily basis, and thousands of families on a weekly basis with meat, groceries of every kind and items to meet that need. The second thing we did was we went out and we bought almost 10,000 tablets, and we distributed, not to just members of the church, to any parent and family that wanted one, until DPS and the corporate community stepped up and they started assisting. But long before they made a move, Triumph Church was always there. That's why I'm here right now, because I don't have to be told to look out for my people. That's something that I intuitively do. One of the mistakes that we make a lot of times in our city is because we don't fight a fight or build a wall the way that other people do. We try to diminish the fight that other people engage in and a parcel of the wall or position that they're building. We have to understand that all of us may not be doing the same thing, but we have got to learn how to respect and appreciate the fact that everybody understands that they have a part in it and appreciate the part that they play. And those are things, and I can name so many more, the thousands of scholarships that we've given. I could talk about the home assistance that we provided. I could talk about the legal services that we paid for. I could talk about the funerals of children that we subsidized. And the list continues to go on. I could talk about the tens of thousands of kids we've taken to Myers for shopping spree. I can talk about using the church as a mobile clinic. When you start talking about services rendered, the list would be endless. We can just sit here all day and just talk about whatever service that we saw in the community and a need came up. Triumph Church has tried to meet that need. And I believe that experience is what will give me the leadership capability to take this city forward in a way that will be bigger and bolder in ways that speaks to the depth of the foundation that we have right now. Integrity, character, making sure that we have leaders and we have people in leadership who people can trust and who people can respect and who can be a model for not just our residents, but particularly our young people, so that they have benchmarks that they want to live up to. By making sure that we're not just talking to them during election time. So many times we wait until election time to talk to people, and that's why people are not engaged. We have to be honest. Almost 80% of the people in the city of Detroit are not engaged regularly in a democratic process. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop waiting to primaries and to general elections to talk to people. We need to carry on those conversations, those collaborations, and that engagement all year long, to making sure that we are keeping our ears to the ground, to hearing people concerned, to making sure that we are accessible, that people can put their hands on us, and we can put our hands on people, to make sure that what we're doing is actually making a difference. Sometimes we make the mistake in believing just because we're doing good, that it's doing some good. And we have to have some metrics in place to make sure that we're doing that. And who better to tell you if the good you're doing is doing any good than the people who are supposed to be impacted by the good you do. It's the same thing when people ask the question about experience. When they say, what gives you an advantage when you don't have a political experience over against someone that has political experience? And what I always ask people, is it about their experience, or is it about how their experience or lack of experience is impacting your experience? At the end of the day, you can have all the experience you want in the world, but if your experience is not making an impact on the people that's supposed to have a different kind of experience, then your experience don't mean nothing. And we need to change people's experience. And so if we're gonna change people's experience, we got to change the type of experience of people that we're putting into these leadership seats. Well, one of the things that you've seen is that there is money in this most recent budget to increase drivers, to do something about equipment, and that's a start. But we know training, recruitment is going to be vital. And so one of the things that we would do is making sure that we are recruiting, we are training, but also we got to not skip over this. We got to make sure that we're taking care of the people who are already doing the job and making sure that they are receiving fair compensation, making sure that they have the equipment and the resources they need in order to carry out their job, making sure that we have the right leadership in place, because I'm of the opinion that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so making sure that we have the leadership in place and making sure that those that are the stakeholders in the transportation department understand what the vision of that is and how we expect to get there. But also not just locally, making sure that we continue to educate people on the fact that people's livelihood, their survival, is predicated on accessible and reliable transportation. And it limits our ability to attract business and industry. What we don't want to happen again, we don't want companies who are planning to come to the city of Detroit decide to cross us off the list because we're still debating over transportation and regional transportation. And so as mayor, one of the things that we will continue to do is to make sure that we're working for a more efficient, and innovative transportation system. Well, one of the things we have to do is we have to educate our citizens and continue to provide platforms of education of what the problems are and what the needs are, and making sure that we are creating opportunities for a healthier community. And that's not just with the air and with the water, that's also with the body, with the mind. When you talk about health, you're talking about multiple categories. You're not just talking about, the body. We gotta use that term and wellness in a much broader sense, to even be inclusive of not just society and culturally and geographically, but also personally and individually. It's hard to sell a vision to people for something corporately when we have not partnered and assisted them with determining what a vision is for themselves. And so people have to have their own vision for their own life, and then it's easy for them to buy into what that vision would be for the city. One of the things that we're talking about, because depending upon where you go in the city, the environmental concerns will change. We started out in Southwest Detroit, so we know that'll be one concern. Then when you start talking about water, that's another concern. When you start talking about green space, when you start talking about educating people on food and the type of foods that they're eating. And so I don't believe it's a one-pronged attack. I believe it's a collaborative attack with us pulling people together, educating people on new and innovative ways in order to deal with environmental concerns in our community. Looking at the infrastructure, while they're going in the ground to attack one problem, having a chief neighborhood officer, putting someone intentionally on the 11th floor whose sole job will be to collaborate and pull together multiple stakeholders. So while you're addressing one issue, you're not just addressing that one issue, you're addressing multiple issues so that the city can take a lead in addressing some of these long, structured, and systematic issues that people feel like are just being neglected and ignored. Well, one of the things that you have to remember and we have to be reminded of is that, half of the budget is restricted already. And so at the end of the day, we have to use the dollars we have. Understanding that whatever mayor goes in, you have to find ways to increase revenue in the city of Detroit. And getting people who are working for the city, who live outside the city, incentives to move back into the city is ways that you can incentivize that. Opening up opportunities for people to come into the city and purchase homes in the city. Opening opportunities for businesses to want to move into the city and do what so many of our corporate partners are doing, giving incentives for people who work in the city to live in the city, are ways that we can do that. Tapping into untapped markets and industry is a way in order to do that. But when you talk about the fiscal crisis, it's about looking at the numbers. And at the end of the day, and the numbers are the numbers. You know what you need for police, you know what you need for fire, you know what you need for 911. You know that there's some basic services that we have in place that we got to do. But then we have to look at what are we prioritizing with the rest of those dollars. And I believe that when you know the vision and you know the destiny, then you make decisions with the dollars that take you to that destiny. And that's what drives the decisions and how you spend the particular resources. We got to remember that COVID money was designed to do one thing, to eradicate poverty. And we got to ask ourselves, how is that going? So one of the things we have to look at is we have to be fair with ourselves, because numbers don't lie to us. And if the trajectory is not going in the direction that we want it to go, we have to reassess and say, let's look, there's some things we need to do. That's insanity, we already know. We can't continue to do what we've always done and think we're gonna get something different. We got to be willing to change. Listen, one of the things I get excited is when I see these young, tech-savvy, innovative residents in this city who are working in overdrive in order to make sure that they wake up and get this city tapped into it. When you start talking about the economical and fiscal challenges that this city faces, we are going to have to find ways to use technology and innovative methods and platforms in order to push the city forward. When you start talking about even the police department, and you start talking about the SHOTS program, being able to use technology to determine what type of gun that came from, the type of bullet, where the incident took place. We have to be able to use technology. Sometimes we get intimidated by elements of society that we don't comprehend and fully understand. But I do believe that we're going to have to explore stuff that's automatically coming, that whether you want it to come or not, it's coming. And we got to figure out, how do we use these not to displace employees and manpower, but use technology in a way where we're operating more efficiently. When we look at even the efficiency of the city, how efficient do it need to be in order to attract business, in order to attract developers and individuals, entrepreneurs that want to do business in this town? We have to find a way where people ain't going to multiple floors, ain't going to multiple buildings, that they can go to one place and we can do stuff more efficiently. We go across the country and we see how things are being done. Why is it just being done there? Why is it that we can't experience that type of efficiency and service in our own city? Listen, I tell people all the time, there have been some tremendous things done under the Duggan administration. But he couldn't do everything. Nobody can do everything. But there's some things that if we're going to keep moving forward, we got to do. And one of the things we got to do is find how can we do it more efficiently by incorporating technology without displacing people and still providing people with opportunities to make viable living. I believe that I would be the next mayor of Detroit because for 27 years, I've been rocking with my life for the people in the city of Detroit. And I believe that when they go to the poll and they think about who they can trust and who's been rocking with them with his life, I believe that they'll make a decision that they're gonna rock with me. And my name is Solomon Kinloch, and I approve that message.